Welcome back to the podcast. Our guest today is Peter Perez, and he is the founder of PCE Solutions. To start us off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, Peter, and about the company?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Peter Perez, president and founder of PCE Solutions. We are based out of Calgary, Canada, but we've got clients across the country in pretty much all major cities. And we also have some clients in the United States now, primarily the Tampa Bay area. We have a client in New York State and a client in Ohio as well. So we're growing, and our objective is to get to a point where we've got a formal IT presence in pretty much all major city North America. That's kind of a BHANG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. But yeah, we are a managed IT service provider. We provide fully managed IT services as well as fully managed cybersecurity services.
Can you tell us a little about what the company is actively doing right now to grow?
Yeah, that's a great question. For the longest time, we've grown primarily through word of mouth referral, but now, as a company levels up and, it grows, word of mouth referral doesn't really cut it anymore. So for us, we're primarily growing through some business development efforts, whether it's cold reach out through our sales team or whether it's through our social media or digital marketing. But a lot of it too is just for me going out and getting out there in the business world. I'm a member of EO. So as part of EO, I go to various events and I meet various business owners and do a lot of networking that way. And also, just going to the odd event in the United States as well, whether it's, a Datto conference or a ConnectWise conference, for example. The more hands you shake, the more money you make, right? So that's kind of what I'm doing a lot more
Mhm.
of nowadays.
Yeah, awesome. To kind of reiterate about networking seems to be one of the most powerful things when it comes to the IT space. Now, with all those conversations you're having with all those different types of people in every single niche of the umbrella of IT, what are the kind of the biggest shifts or trends you're seeing right now in the space?
Well, I think that obviously the elephant in the room is AI. AI is kind of like when the internet first came out, where it's just such a revolutionary technology that we know is going to change the world, but we're not really sure how yet. And here we are today, fast forward 20 years, and the world is completely online. I think AI is going to be one of those revolutionary technologies as well. More and more, we're noticing that businesses are starting to integrate AI into their day-to-day operations, whether it's chat GPT integration, co-pilot, AI agents answering and making calls for you, handling some of that frontline customer support. We're really starting to see that take off. And I think this is just tip of the iceberg. There's going to come a point where the vast majority of that frontline work is going to be replaced through AI and automation. And of course,
Mhm.
cybersecurity as well is also paramount. I mean, back in the day, cybersecurity used to be kind of something that a hacker would do as a hobby. And now it's become big business and they're multi billions a year. I mean, if you look at the amount of activity that's done by, bad actors in the dark web, for example, it's in the multi billions a year. So it's big business and something that companies really need to work on defending against.
What is AI playing any role in how you operate inside your company?
Absolutely. We're definitely very pro AI, and everyone in my company has a full Microsoft Copilot license, and we started introducing it into our day-to-day operations. Where an email that would take 20 to 30 minutes to write, for example, to give a nice formal, proper response. A couple of sentences, hit generate, and that email is complete and ready to send. So we're starting to integrate a lot more AI on some of that tedious, repetitive work that used to just be a time suck. We've really automated most of that now, and it's saved us a lot of time and made us a lot more efficient. With that, we're able to serve more customers with a lower headcount, and that's driving margins.
Now, to kind of go on the other side of it, have you seen AI be used as a negative in the space where maybe attackers are utilizing it to hit businesses with?
That's a great question. And yes, the answer is yes to that. So just like, in the past, you would see phishing campaigns and phishing emails sent out to socially engineer your staff and to respond into a fraudulent email that comes from the CDO, for example. Now with AI being a part of that, it's really sped up the frequency and the volume of those attacks. So, we're seeing I remember, just a few years ago, we would see maybe a network breach take place maybe once, twice a year. Now they're happening monthly. And despite all the best technical controls you can have in place, realistically, the attack vector that's being leveraged the most is still your people. So ensuring that your people know what to look for and are keeping up to date with the latest security awareness training is just paramount. But just the volume and frequency we've noticed has gone up quite a bit because much of this workload has been automated.
Now, to speak more about your
Right.
company, what sets your company ahead of other MSPs or MSSPs or cybersecurity firms?
That's a great question. I think that's a tough question for a lot of MSPs to answer because it's one of those things that anybody can say, "Oh, well, we provide the best service," or "We provide this and that," and that's the same thing that everybody says. I mean, I can give you some of the key points about us. I mean, we are very much a cybersecurity first company, so every single one of our packages are built on the NIST 800-171 standard as well as a CMMC standard, and because of that, regardless of which tier of package you're on, you're going to get a collection of cybersecurity services that are going to come with it that are best on these best practice standards. So for us, I think that what we've come to the conclusion is that you can't really operate in today's business world without having some foundation of good cybersecurity hygiene. And because of that,
Mhm.
we won't even take on clients anymore unless they have some base cybersecurity. What we prefer to do is if you don't want our IT service, that's fine. But we're going to sell you. We can sell you a base package of cybersecurity, but we won't sell you IT without cybersecurity. They got to come hand in hand. So I guess that's number one. Number two, for us, I think that we really strive to be a one-touch fix company in the sense that the last thing that we want is a recurring IT issue. When an IT issue is reported to us, our objective is to nip it in the bud. So one-touch fix, permanently resolve the problem. And that's a win-win for both of us because from the client's perspective, the last thing they want is recurring IT problems. And from our perspective, since we work on a fixed managed monthly agreement, which is a fixed monthly fee, the last thing we want is a recurring IT issue or ruining profitability too. So it's kind of a win-win when you align your business interests on both sides.
For those that are just stepping into the MSP world, opening their own MSP company, what are some tips that you would give them to start out
Yeah.
and to grow to where you guys are at now?
Oh man, that's such a good question. I mean, if I could go back in time, there's a lot of things I would have done differently. I think that one of the best pieces of advice I could give is to really spend the time to fine tune your PSA, your professional services administrator, because it's one of those things where a lot of times people just slap things together and they try to figure it out as they go. But the amount of efficiency that you can drive by making sure that that thing is dialed in, you can get all your reporting and just everything flows through that. That's one piece of advice I would give. Another piece of advice I would give too is just make sure you've got your SEO and your PPC and your digital marketing really dialed in. That's another piece where if it goes unmaintained and ignored, you really lose out on a lot of opportunity. And then
Mm.
I guess another piece of advice I would give is just making sure that as soon as you can start measuring KPIs, start measuring those and policing those because it's one of those things that you might so for example you have a month you're starting out you make 10 15 $20,000 you're like, oh wow, I'm making so much money. But when you really look into it and you check in how many expenses do you how efficient it is my time utilization, you realize that a lot of that money isn't really profit. And in the end, top line is for vanity and bottom line is for sanity. So just measuring those things and keeping an eye on it's super important.
Talking about opportunity, what does effective client acquisition look like for you? And we see a lot of these MSP companies are struggling with client acquisition because they don't know how to get their message across, right? When you're selling to these smaller mid-sized businesses, the last thing they want to do is spend thousands of dollars on something that they don't see the value in. How does client acquisition look like for you, and how do you get your message across?
That's a great question. And I wish I had like the perfect answer, but I don't, because I think that's something that we're still trying to figure out. I think that for us, what I have found is most effective is when you speak to the executive in the language that they speak, i.e., when you are able to translate IT objectives and IT efforts into business outcomes. So, for example, an executive is not going to want to know what encryption protocols you're using on your VPN solutions. They're not going to want to know, all the details of the white paper on the latest WPA encryption. They don't care about any of that stuff. All they care about is how is this going to benefit my business and how is this going to increase my bottom line and drive efficiency. If you can learn how to speak that language where you're having a business conversation opposed to a technical conversation, that's when you can win the hearts and minds of these executives. And really, another thing as well is that IT is very much a trust-based industry. In the end, companies are entrusting you with the technical backbone of their entire operation. So they have to be able to trust you. And by being an honorable, honest person and just having integrity is really one of the foundations of how you operate. If that's able to come off in translation, when you're speaking to these executives, that means a lot. So just making sure that you're always maintaining that trust with that client so that they trust you and know that they're in good hands.
Yeah, I love how you said you got to speak their language. Um, Misconception in overall in business, even from IT to even a marketing agency, right? Is when you're selling something to a business, they don't care about the technical aspect of it. They care about what the service and the results that their business is going to receive from your service. What has kind of been the biggest challenges in growing the business over the past 12 months?
I think that, not just the 12 months, I think it's an ongoing challenge with IT is that, unlike other industries where I would say that change is not, doesn't happen as quickly. IT, especially, with AI and cyber and everything that's going on, it's changing daily. So the biggest thing I find that to stay successful in this industry is you have to be able to keep a pulse on where things are headed. You got to be able to forecast where things are headed, and you have to be able to pivot. For example, when we first started the company, we were a break fix IT services company. And what that was, I mean, for those who are not familiar with break fix, essentially what it is when something breaks, you call the IT company, they show up and they fix it. Now, you know, that was the traditional time and material business model. And the issue was that if you were really good at actually solving problems, you were going to work yourself out of a job because you would show up, you'd fix all the problems, and next thing you know, your phone stops ringing because you're really good at what you do. Whereas in the companies that weren't that great at what they did, well, sure enough, they would get 5 or 6 phone calls for the same reoccurring problem, right? And then every time they go, they send a bill. So what we have found is that that's an example of where the pivot from break fix IT to managed services was essential. Because by switching to a managed service agreement, that kept us in business. Had we stayed on time and materials, we would have been worked ourselves out of a job a long time ago. So that's one example of it. Another thing is, keeping up with the technology trends. So, for example, when we first started, everything was on-prem servers. Then the cloud revolution took place, and then everything started moving to the cloud. So we had to learn cloud to get certified in cloud technologies and just learn how to do all of that. Then cybersecurity became paramount. We got to pivot and learn cybersecurity. So, and then now AI. So making sure that we have a good grasp on AI and how to integrate it into business technologies. These are the pivots and the changes that are happening in industry all the time. And if you don't keep up with these things, you will be left behind.
Yeah, interesting points. Now, looking ahead, what are some of the top priorities for the next year? We just started 2026. It's already February, so time is flying. But what's your top priority for the rest of the year?
Yeah, so I mean, we've got some pretty aggressive growth goals for the next 5 years. So for us, obviously, continuing to grow our presence in all the major cities in North America. I mean, that's still one of our primary objectives. But I would say that for us, it's really finding a way to offer AI as a service and really defining what that looks like and introducing it to the market in a way that it's a product that everyone's going to want. So that's, I think, our number one objective for this year. And also just continuing to grow our existing operations and hiring, top talent. That's one of the challenges we run into in this space is that, it's very easy to find somebody who has a very high technical aptitude, somebody who has excellent communication skills. But finding the perfect balance of both of those is really a requirement. It's something that we look for at PCE. And recruiting that talent is always a challenge, but it's something that we've been successful at.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about your ideal client and what exactly you do to protect them? And not only protect them, but for them to see an ROI on the service that they pay for?
Yeah, so I think for us, the most common call we get is, and just to give you some context on this, usually when it comes to IT services, many companies look at it as a cost center opposed to an actual efficiency driver or profitability driver. And for us, the most common call we get is, "Hey, our IT, everything's broken, nothing works. When we call our IT guy, it takes 3 hours to get a response, et cetera, et cetera." I mean, for us, I think that that's the most common call we get. But our ideal clients are those clients that do call in where they're having all kinds of pain and inefficiency issues, and then we come in and we solve all of them. And not only that, we give them a level of IT service that they've never experienced before. So to give you some more perspective on that, I have a case study that I'm very proud of where we had a client that was working with one of the really large firms. I think it was one of the managed service providers in Western Canada that had something like 200 staff, et cetera. And they'd been working with that company for about 2 years. And the service delivery was so inefficient that they ended up having to hire a second IT company just to help out with the boots on the ground and that was a weekly visit just to take care of a lot of the fires that were going on in the environment. So they had two separate companies to bridge the gap. And despite that, they were still having weekly network outages, weekly Exchange server outages. They tried to apply for cyber insurance 4 times and got declined all 4 times. So after working with this firm for 2 years, they finally heard about us. They gave us an opportunity to take a swing at it. And we had everything cleaned up in 4 months, running smoothly. And then they were able to qualify and get approved for cyber insurance within 8 months. I think that's a testament to what we do and the kind of clients we look for. I mean, that was an engineering firm, which is our primary vertical, but we work with industry companies in all industries. But I would say our primary verticals is engineering, medical, and financial, so accounting firms, CPAs, that sort of thing.
Awesome. Yeah, I know a lot of these smaller MSPs, they fight a lot over these healthcare contracts that I've spoken with. Your service, is it mainly like MRR, monthly recurring revenue, or do you kind of contract with these businesses? How does that kind of look?
Yeah, no problem. So I think that MRR is the magic word. I mean, that's really what every MSP is after nowadays. And when it comes to best practices as to how you should be structured as an MSP, even when a company is looking to acquire an MSP, I mean, they look for 70 to 75% of MRR at a minimum in terms of your total revenue. So MRR is key. So when it comes to working with healthcare providers and whatnot, obviously with HIPAA in the United States or PIPEDA in Canada, making sure that you understand what those requirements are and help the companies maintain those compliance requirements, and then date them and keep up with the trends as they change. That's a key requirement to get into that vertical. So making sure you've got a good understanding there. But yeah, in terms of how we operate things, very much monthly recurring revenue, one monthly fixed fee. It covers your IT operations entirely, with the odd project here and there that's outside of scope, but mostly the MLO contract would cover most. So thanks for that, those companies.
Awesome. Well, that's how you grow. You're not going to have much growth if you're just doing one-off projects here and there.
Not only that, it's just a lot. Manage, like just to DeAngelo, just to comment on that, it's a lot
Uh-huh.
harder to manage a business when you have feast or famine cycles, right? Like it's when you have
Mhm.
MRR and you've got a recurring monthly stream, it's a lot easier to manage a business and plan for it, right? Opposed to
Mhm.
one month you make a fortune, another month you're trying to figure out how to make payroll, right?
Exactly. I wanted to kind
Oh,
of spin back about cloud. So when cloud first came out, how did you see it kind of shift the industry and how everything is almost on the cloud nowadays?
yeah. So I think that the big shift was the ability to have enterprise level service without the enterprise level capital expenditure up front. Back in the day, if you wanted to have, you know, a fully Microsoft domain join integrated environment with Microsoft Exchange and all the bells and whistles, you could do that, but that's a lot of money up front. And then there's a lot of maintenance and there's hardware cycles you got to watch for. So it really was a barrier to entry for a lot of small business. I think that, the introduction of cloud services, in particular Microsoft Exchange Online, opened up that ability to businesses of all sizes without that barrier to entry, right? So that was huge. And then also the amount of technical expertise that one would need in order to configure an on-premise environment to allow it to be accessible from anywhere without clunky VPN solutions and whatnot. There was quite a bit of skill and expertise required to deploy that. And with the deployment, the introduction of cloud technology, it really made it so you could work from anywhere, anytime, and you didn't need that deep level of expertise to configure the various routing rules and the network engineering changes that you need to make to be able to allow that to be a thing. So that was a big change.
Now, to end us off here, to go back and speak about hindsight, with the benefit of hindsight, what's one decision or even a belief that you'd rethink if you were starting over all over again?
That's a good question. I really got to reflect on that one. A core belief. You know what? I actually have an answer for that. I think that when
Mhm.
you're first starting out, you're kind of you're scratching and clawing to make enough money to cover your bills, and you really kind of look at the market. And I'm only speaking for myself. I can't speak for everyone, but for myself, I really looked at the market as a dog eat dog. or you got to go out there and get whatever you can and scratch and claw. But when you really look at the size of the market, it's enormous. The market is huge, especially in most major metropolitan areas. So the reality is that there really is enough business to go around for everybody, and it's one of those things that you really, instead of looking at your competitors as enemies, you can look at them as colleagues, and you can still, break bread with them, and you can share ideas. And I think that abundance mentality opposed to the scarcity mentality is how I probably would have changed things back in the day. That's probably how I've started things differently today.
Yeah, I love how you said that. I think that a lot of people, when they step into any certain space, they think that it has to be me alone, alone, alone. I have this great idea. I don't want anybody doing this. I don't want anybody knowing anything that I'm doing. But mentorship is key. Mentorship is a fast track. Networking is key. Listening to other people's mistakes, and what worked for them is going to propel you much further than if you were to not speak with anybody. So I'm glad you said that. Now, Peter, where could the viewers find you at?
Yeah. So easiest way to find me is just go to www.pcsolutions.net. All our contact information is there. Also, I'm on LinkedIn. You can just find me under Peter Perez. And always happy to have a conversation and meet new people. So happy to connect with anybody.
Awesome, Peter. I enjoyed our conversation. You're a man that has a lot of interesting things to say that a lot of people can learn from. So I'm glad we had this conversation.
I appreciate the time, DeAngelo. Thanks for having me on.
Yep. All right, guys. See you in the next episode.